What is up, guys, and welcome back from the Diablo 3, tips and trick video. To start off, what is hardcore, right? And whenever you actually create a character, just like you can, select seasonal, you might not be able to see the seasonal option because of my camera, but there's also a hardcore option as well. And what happens here is once you die, your character is gone, right? Now, that doesn't mean you actually lose everything that your character accumulated while leveling, and I'll go over everything that you get to keep and everything like that. A lot of the tips I'll be talking about are going to be going over gearing, survivability, kind of just how to play, right? As you can see here, this is my season 19 barbarian, right? I'm just going to go over this stuff. So if you die, you'll lose everything on your character, right? And in this inventory, but you won't lose anything in your stash. You get to keep all that. Everything in your, materials tab, right? You'll get to keep all this. You get to keep your gold, and you get to keep your blood shards, right? And with that being said, a lot of people are probably wondering, why would you even want to play hardcore if, it already takes a long time to grind items, but I think for a lot of people, including myself, I think it's about the danger. I think it's about like always being aware, cautious, and then also kind of the, you feel more accomplished when you reach certain milestones that you don't necessarily feel when you're playing softcore. I think probably one of the biggest tips I can give to anybody wanting to try hardcore is about changing your mindset. Now, if you play softcore a lot, you run into certain situations where, it doesn't matter if you run into a fix, you can like kind of test the waters a little bit. If you die too much, you back down the difficulty. You don't really have that option in hardcore, right? So you want to plan your character. You want to accept the fact that you will die, especially if you're playing like a hardcore seasonal character and you're trying to push leaderboards. Everybody dies eventually, but there are actually ways to, not completely start over from zero, right? And that's why stockpiling gear and all these other things I'll go over come into play, and not to get into a hurry. I think a lot of people, expect, the same progression in hardcore as they do softcore. But the fact of the matter is, you can't take as many chances as you do in softcore. So that's probably the biggest tip right there, is just don't rush. Be comfortable with the idea that you will lose a character. Save spare pieces of gear and everything like that. All right, so the next tip I'm going to go over is to keep lag, especially network lag and like computer issues in mind, as well as like peripherals, right? So if you like use a wireless mouse, make sure it's charged up before you have like a play session. Like I have a wireless mouse too, but you can plug it in. But I always make sure that like my mouse is fully charged, because if you are in a rift and you are doing your thing and everything's good, if your mouse dies, that could spell death for your character, as well as like just network lag. If your internet's really bad that day, or you've had like just computer issues of any kind, keep that in mind. There are days where the internet might be or like even the Diablo servers might be like just super bad, a lot of disconnects, or rubber banding, or whatever the case may be. Those days I'll just not even play hardcore. I'll go like softcore or something, because it's just not worth the headache, right? Next thing that I'll recommend is actually stockpiling gear. So this way my stash is kind of set up, right? And this is what I do kind of on softcore as well. My first tab has got like, my gems and everything like that. I keep like puzzle rings in here. But even on softcore, especially on hardcore, I try to keep every piece of jewelry that I find, because if you ever have to like, get a piece of jewelry, it's better to like, save every one that you actually, come across, instead of like dumping blood shards on them. And that's just like a kind of a Diablo tip overall. But even I have a tab here for just legendaries, right? And these are like, items that they might not be like rolled correctly, but they give me the option to like, roll them in the queue if I ever need a build that uses it. So we're talking like really popular, bracers, utility pieces, belts, and weapons. And then I have like, my normal set, tab here as well. The only thing that's different between softcore and hardcore that I do here is, if my build is using a certain type of weapon, I will just keep multiple copies of it, right? And unfortunately, like, I don't have multiple copies of Solemn Bow, but they would be here if I did. And then also just keeping, as many waste pieces as possible. I don't actually have any spare right now. I think they actually might be on a mule. Say you're like, barbarian whirlwind, and you're just saving every piece of waste gear that you find. It might not be rolled correctly or anything, but if you do die and you start a new barbarian, you can go to your stash tab and, you know, you already have like a full set of waste that you can roll and, enchant and all that stuff and get up. All right. So the next tip is involving, if you do die, getting a character back to 70 as fast as possible. Usually before I even start pushing to greater rifts, the first thing I'm going to do is focus on leveling a gem of ease at least to 25, right? So let's say your character, gets your gem of ease to 25, it hangs out in your stash and your guy dies. Start a new barbarian. You could pop this into a weapon, make it level 1. So we could go in here and we could take any decent weapon that would be good for like leveling up to 70, put a socket on it. Maybe we have a gift or something hanging around, and then we can throw this gem of ease in there. Then that level 1 will be able to use it, and that helps speed up the process. What's even better than that is if you can get a gem of ease as close to level 100 as possible. That's going to really speed you up through, all the way up to like in the 40s or so when it kind of slows down. But you can essentially just go insta all the way to like almost 50 in just like maybe 1 or 2 stages of a rift on T6. So that's like really paramount, right? Gem of ease is your friend in hardcore. That's going to be your biggest ally right there. Another thing that might be kind of awkward for most people who play softcore a lot is, if you're playing softcore, you get kind of like one set of gear and you're kind of just complete, always maintaining or upgrading that. You'll have one set of gear that you're, working with. For hardcore, another thing you can do is if you really don't want to lose really good pieces, say you have like Ancients or you have like a Primal or something you really don't want to lose, you can use subpar gear for like farming, normal rifts or even low NGRs to level like gems and stuff, and then only use your really good stuff for pushing your greater rifts. Right? It sounds kind of like counterintuitive, like if you're running a whirlwind barb to have like 2 complete different, sets of gear, but when it comes down to actually using like gems for augmenting your pushing build, yeah, I'd say it's worth it. Like, because you're probably not going to run like GRs that you're using to farm gems with augmented gear, right? So if you do lose that stuff, you're not really out a whole lot. So that's what I would recommend is, save that really, really good gear for, just solo pushing. All right, so the next tip has to do with legendary gems, right? So you can get like multiple legendary gems, especially having multiple gem of ease is really nice. But the way you do that, and you can just take the gem, because if once you complete a GR, the GR is going to check your stash and your equipment and your inventory. If it doesn't find a gem in any of those 3 places, it's going to drop it for you. So let's say that I wanted to like run a rift here and I wanted to get another gem of ease. I could drop this on the ground and then I could just go run a rift, pick up a new one, and then go over here and pick them both up. Another trick you can actually do is if you have really bad internet or like intermittent disconnecting or lag or whatever the case may be, you can place all your gem of eases or all the items that you want to get multiple of on like an alt. So I think I have like an alt hardcore barb that I just log into and just pull gem of eases out, and then whenever I get the number of them I want, I put them all back in my stash and then go level them. And that works for any legendary gem. Maybe you want like multiple Bane of Traps or whatever. But if you have really good internet, you don't have any problems like with getting disconnected or anything like that or whatever, yeah, you can just drop them on the ground. Works just fine. But I don't trust Blizzard servers anymore, especially with Diablo 3. So putting them on an alt is just one extra step, but I think that's probably the safest. Just in case. All right, the next tip kind of goes over situational awareness for the most part, like different mob types, resistances, knowing your gear, and knowing what you can handle. And that's like you're gonna learn real quick, just like in softcore, what mobs really kind of just suck for your build. Generally speaking, for this guy, range, or actually just across any classes, really. Impalers, any sort of like range class that can kind of like shoot a bunch of stuff at you, because impalers, their projectile is really hard to see, and other things like resistances. So if you get into a rift that has like poison, if you know that you have really horrible poison resistance, don't feel bad to like pop out of that GR or that normal and restart the game and get a new, fish a little bit, fish your GRs. There's no reason to like go, spinning off through a poison ridden GR. If you touch one pool, you're just insta dead, right? Not worth it. So you just keep in mind like all your numbers, and once you engage a pack or something, if they start throwing stuff out that you cannot survive in, skip champion elite packs if you have to, right? You'll complete the rift regardless, and if you really can't do it, just restart the game, find a new rift. RNG can be a bitch sometimes, but if you put a lot of time into your hardcore character, it's definitely worth just taking the cautious route, right? All right, next tip is like over difficulty and all that good stuff, right? On softcore, it's pretty easy to get to like Torment 13 and 16 really, really quick, even with subpar gear, because those deaths, there's real no penalty, right? But it's normal for hardcore players to kind of like hang out on low, like Torment 7 or Torment 10 or something like that longer than softcore characters, especially when completing a farming build, right? If you get like pretty good but subpar gear, like you wouldn't be pushing like over GR 100 with the gear, but farm at like GR 7 or 10, good farming gear that allows you to like farm things like GR 13, just because the biggest annoyance too is like, just like in softcore, you want to get to like T 13 and 16 and stuff like that because of like DB drops, and just you want to kind of get more blood shards and all that good stuff. But it's just, I think it's like a longer game, like it's kind of like the longer gearing arc in hardcore. So don't feel bad if you're hanging out on anything in the range of like 6 to 10 longer than you normally do. I'd say once you get your hardcore character geared enough to farm 13, 14, or 13 through 16, you're doing pretty good, right? And you've probably already adjusted your mindset and everything to like being situationally aware of things and staying out of damage and all that stuff. Probably one of the biggest questions I get is how much hit points or life should you stack as a hardcore character. I think it really kind of depends on the build that you're running, but I think a good range is probably anywhere from 900,000 to a million, and that's a lot of life stacking, right? But it gets to the point where it gives you enough margin to survive some things that would normally hit you and kill you in one shot. But yeah, that's probably like, and this guy's sitting at like sub 800. Like he's at like, without buffs, he's like 725,000, 724,000. He does pretty good, right? He's not, completely, completely geared and, good to go. But when he does get there, he'll scale probably into that range. The other thing too is like with like just general like GR strategy with greater rifts. Normally, you just run in and kill the Rift Guardian wherever he drops, right? But it's a good tactic. Like once you actually get the Rift Guardian to pop in a GR, take him back to the most recent exit because he'll teleport to you, and then that way if you kind of like, you can do this with like champion packs too. If it's not too much of a time loss to pull him over the door. But let's say the Rift Guardian is like really tough for you, for your build. If you have problems, you can like pop back to the previous level in the GR, reset a little bit. His abilities will kind of reset, so you kind of get like to start over a little bit, and you can pop back down and engage him again, right? It's a really good strategy with that. Keep that in mind when you run GRs. If your build does good and you're like okay with running on lower difficulties, you'll probably actually never get to that point. That's really kind of just like for the pushing GR, like when you have really trying to like just push your personal best, using like greater rift and champion strategies and stuff like that is really helpful. I don't want to run this video too long, so I'll give you a couple more tips that I think are important. One of the big tips is like, try to prepare for the Waller effects, right? You don't want to get stuck in Waller, because in some GR maps, they can cast Waller in such a way that you literally won't be able to move. So you want to have like a leap or a teleport or some way to get out of it. If you're not using ability like that, running bottomless potion of Kool-Aid is nice, to get out of those situations. I don't necessarily run it on this guy because, with Whirlwind, I can kind of like see the wall coming and like kind of get out of it. And also, if you're playing in the right difficulty, and you're able to keep DPS up, especially with whirlwind, because like if you're stuck in a wall, you're still kind of whirlwinding, and dust devils are doing damage, so you can kind of like survive a little bit. But if you're in a class or a build that requires distance from the target, and you get trapped in a wall, or you can't do something that makes you very vulnerable, you definitely want to be able to have some sort of defense against the wall or a fix. And the other thing too is, like, as far as potions go, don't use the teleport potion, right? It's unpredictable. It can put you in really bad situations. I think generally speaking, right? Not That's not like a hardcore tip, but like even softcore, I don't use the teleport potion. Actually, most of the time, like my preferred potion is Potion of the Diamond, right? Get that little boost of all res, and I usually pop that if I'm going into like an affix or like a damage type that I don't have a lot of resistance for, or if I have good resistance but I want a little extra padding just to be sure. And that I kind of just use it kind of like, if I go into a champion or elite pack or Rift Guardian, pop it anyway. You want to stack some damage reduction, you want to have like damage mitigation, but do not skimp on DPS with your gear for the sake of trying to stay alive, because if you skimp on DPS, your DPS will be low and mobs will stay alive, which the longer mobs stay alive in a rift, the more chances you have of dying, right? So, having good DPS is a survivability tactic, just like stacking like, defensive stats would be, right? I know there's a lot to go over there, a lot of tips and everything like that. Not a lot of people play hardcore because they feel like, I don't know, they put a lot of work in, and then everything just kind of like, gets erased if you make like a mistake. And it's not about even making mistakes, right? Sometimes the game can lag, the server can lag. Sometimes, you know, mobs do like cheatsy things that you just get unlucky, right? But it's kind of all about just planning, right? Stockpile your stash with gear that you can use if you do die. Basically just plan ahead. And another thing that most people do as well is they'll actually level their alt before their main even dies, right? So then, and that's a way to kind of like, keep your stash clear of gear and everything. So if your like main character does die, you've already got a level 70 barbarian that you've been throwing gear at, and he's, he's not comparable to where your guy was, but it's not like you have to start over and like level him immediately, right? But anyway, this video's already gone long enough. Thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and all that stuff. Or if you have any questions in the comments, or peace out, good luck. See you guys next time.